There we go. All right, we are all unmuted. It is 6 o'clock and it looks like we still have a few people joining us. So we'll give people just a couple of minutes. Wanted to welcome everyone to WildCare's first ever webinar. So if things are a little choppy, we apologize in advance because we are experimenting with the new technology to have a webinar, but very, very excited to have everyone joining us this evening. We're anticipating about an hour-long presentation, and then we have an amazing, very special thing at the end when we'll be doing answering questions. Melanie's going to feed some of our baby squirrels. So you are going to have the opportunity. Here is their syringes of formula right here. So you are going to have the opportunity to see some of our baby squirrels. We're very, very excited about that. So that'll be starting at about 7 o'clock. So we may run just a tiny bit over because we're very excited about our subject matter, and we will hopefully be able to stay on time, however. I think we should probably get started, right? We are recording this, so we will have it available. If you need to duck out a little bit earlier, that's just fine. You can duck back in and watch the recording, which will be on WildCare's website. And we are just so excited to be doing this evening. We have always done the be aware of nests during springtime at this time of year because it's so incredibly common for us to have baby birds and baby squirrels primarily, but other animals as well, coming in because of preventable accidents, including accidents that happen during tree work. And so WildCare is, as I'm sure most of you know, but maybe not everyone, we are a wildlife hospital and a nature education center located in San Rafael, California, or about 20 minutes north of San Francisco. And each year we admit as many as 4,000, between 3,500 and 4,000 injured, orphan, and ill animals, wild animals, into the wildlife hospital. And when it's not a COVID year, our nature education team reaches as many as 35,000 to 40,000 children and adults throughout the San Francisco Bay Area. We have a wonderful series of programs here at WildCare, all of which interact with each other perfectly to help people navigate the boundaries where humans and wildlife come into contact with each other. And I love that WildCare's approach is pragmatic, it's practical, and we are very, very aware that the work we're doing doesn't just help animals, it also helps people. And so the idea of helping us live well with wildlife to make that boundary where we're coming into contact with animals as harmonious as possible, and that's for everybody's benefit, really. And this respect the nest concept is such a big part of that, right? So getting that information out to you guys to protect baby animals, and just also to just bring you closer to the animals with which you share your environment that might be, even as we have this webinar, nesting in your trees and your bushes. So I wanted to send very, very special thanks to the amazing artist Michael Schwab, who did our Respect the Nest artwork. Such a gorgeous, gorgeous piece. It is available as a poster on Michael Schwab's website, and I have a link to that on WildCare's website as well. We're at discoverwildcare.org, and if you go to discoverwildcare.org/respect to the nest, you can get to this program's information and also the link to Michael's website for the amazing artwork that he developed for us. And just such a critical message, and we're so excited to have the opportunity to talk to everyone about respecting the nest this spring. So we'll start by meeting our panelists. I am your host for the evening. I am Allison Hermans. I am the Director of Communications at WildCare. I have been at WildCare for 18 years. And the reason I have been at WildCare for 18 years is because I truly, genuinely, and wholeheartedly believe that the work we do here is absolutely amazing, and that every day we save lives and make things better for people and for animals. Introducing my associate, Melanie Piazza. She is the Director of Animal Care here at WildCare. So you do the medical care for the animals running the wildlife hospital. How long have you been here?
19 years.
19 years, yep.
I've got to beat like 6 months.
Yep, I think that's probably true. Yep, absolutely. And then our other wonderful panelists, we're so grateful to you, Jim, for joining us, is Jim Cairns. He is the arborist with Small World Tree Company, and he has been a long-time volunteer at WildCare. How long have you been volunteering with WildCare, Jim?
I think it's like approaching 20 now, I think. Yeah,
yep.
That's actually my main job, is to volunteer at WildCare. My tree company is sort of a bit of an aside, really.
I feel like it's a full-time job for you this time of year.
Useful equipment for wildlife rescue.
Absolutely. So we are thrilled to have all of us today here to talk about this very important topic. And we're hoping that it'll be sort of a dialogue. We do have the question and answer field set up for you to ask questions during the course of the webinar. For most of the questions that you probably want to ask, I'm guessing that we'll cover them during the course of the webinar. So we may not answer them during the actual presentation, but again, we'll have that wonderful question and answer session at the end of the event while Melanie is feeding our baby squirrels. So we should be able to get all of your questions answered. And again, this webinar is being recorded and we will host it and post it on our website, discoverwildcare.org. So let's move on here. Why should you respect the nest? Why is this important? Well, we're coming into wildlife baby season. It is the busiest time of year at WildCare. It is the most magical time of year in the entire world. I mean, it's the baby animals, the spring flowers. It's such a great time of year. But it is also a time where WildCare, again, sees those preventable injuries to animals coming in because of things like tree trimming accidents, and the reason that we decided to have this webinar and do this campaign. So we're going to start out this evening with a look at how we care for the orphan baby animals that come into WildCare after tree trimming accidents. Let me tell you, it's a lot of effort. Take it away, Melanie.
It is a lot of effort. The reason we're doing this webinar, and we have so much educational material out in our education programs, is that we want to prevent animals from coming to our hospital. My main goal would be to be out of a job because no animals got injured or orphaned and didn't need us, right? But until then, right, we're going to be
till that day.
Yeah, so we want to work really hard wherever we can to help educate people, members of the public, to prevent causing animals to need to come into our hospital. So what we're going to show you here is what happens when an accident does happen and an animal is injured or orphaned and they come into our hospital. So we're going to start with the video.
Let that load. There we go.
So this is a time lapse of about 2.5, 3 hours of a Saturday morning for me.
Not a work day.
Not a work day. This is my day off at my house. So this is 16 baby squirrels that I had in foster care. We had over 100 baby squirrels in our hospital, and those that need special attention or need care and feedings through the night go home with our foster care volunteers. We have a great foster care team for many, many species. And this is just who I had.
All
so
the squirrels.
It's cleaning, feeding, medicating. This was actually an older ground squirrel in this cage that was too high stress in the hospital. He wasn't doing well, so he was home at my house where it's quiet. And feeding again, and cleaning and feeding. And then also treating injuries. So of course, with animals that are cut from a nest, this guy, I'm changing a splint on a fractured leg on a squirrel. It just depends. Sometimes you get fractures, sometimes just wounds that we can treat. And then this is the end of everything, cleaning all the laundry and the trash and sweeping up. And then a lot of paperwork. So all of our animals that come to us are assigned an individual patient identification number that stays with them through the entire stay so that we know who's who. And we have to write down everything that we do for them and put it into our database. This is another great example of why we want to keep animals out of the hospital as much as possible. This past season was one of our biggest baby squirrel seasons on record. We assume it's because it was a great acorn and bay nut year here in the Bay Area. So this is a picture of staff, volunteers, and even our executive director.
I want to point out our amazing executive director, Ellen Weisel.
In the back feeding.
Yep, she does every bit of the work here at WildCare.
All of us do, jumping in whenever you need to. And this is a whole row of kennels of baby squirrels that, again, when the volunteers and staff take them home, when they need to be fed, we have to take them back into WildCare with us on our shifts. And so this is what it looks like in addition to the regular animal care we're doing. And the picture of the on the side, that is my end of season. That is the spreadsheet of all of the 214, I forget how many squirrels that we had this season.
That must require so much effort.
Yes, organizing the foster care team is, the squirrels are, it's a full-time job because they graduate from little critter keepers to big cages to outdoor cages. We have different volunteers who have different skill sets that can take squirrels when they're ready. Yeah, so we want to prevent this as much as possible. We want to keep the babies with mom whenever we can.
Right, and if we looked at that chart, if we zoomed in on it, we would see that a significant number of those babies had come in because of accidents with gardening or tree trimming. So it really is such a common thing to have happen. Hang on, there we go. We're going to go into our next video here. This is a look at the songbird room, taking care of injured and orphan songbirds. And you'll hear us talking, and I hope it's not terribly loud. You may want to check your volume. But we'll take a look at this for just a couple of minutes, get a good look at the busy bird room.
Well, hello, everybody. We are here in WildCare's bird room, and I hope you can hear me because, as you can tell, it is a noisy, busy place right now. We have Lily, who is one of our wildlife technicians. And what are you doing for us first, Lily? Actually, Melody is going to talk while Lily feeds. Let's have Melody explain what you're going to do. Go ahead, sure. So Lily's going to feed our littlest patient right now that we have is a hatchling house sparrow. This is our tiniest baby. Go ahead. And this guy was found on the ground at a shopping center. So apparently he fell out of the nest. And there was no way to get him back up into it, unfortunately. So he is with us, and we are sure that we will get some more house sparrows eventually that he can go with. But for now, he's our littlest one. He's on an every 20-minute timer right now, as tiny as he is. Wow. That is the smallest little animal. He probably has to go back in his incubator because he doesn't yet have feathers. Yeah. Yes, and all of these lovely incubators, many of them are new, thanks to all of you who sent donations during our COVID fundraiser. Thank you making so much. Possible. You can go ahead and start on those guys. Here we have Melanie, who of course is our director of animal care, and she's going to be taking us on a little tour of the bird room. So this is the bird house behind the room in here. So you may wonder how we keep track of all of the birds that we have to feed, and this is it. So this is our 30-minute timer. Who is in charge of feeding those babies? And each one that's listed here is a cage of birds. So C1 has 1 husband, C2 has 3, incubator 4 has 1 California scrub jay. So basically the timer goes off and Lily's in charge of feeding all of those birds. Hopefully if she's fast enough, she'll get it done before the timer goes off again. That is hard with the 30-minute timers, I'm sure. A 45-minute timer, 60-minute, in 2 hours. So our goal with all of our patients is to move them through the system as fast as possible. So our little house sparrow that you saw there in the incubator, our little nudie guy, once he gets feathers and he's big enough and no longer needs the incubator, he will graduate to these guys, what these guys are in over here. Hopefully I'm not going to get everybody queasy as I walk here. So these songbird baskets have different nests of babies, and when she lists that thing, you can peek in there and see how they're all doing. So when they don't need supplemental heat anymore, or if they're just on heating pads, they move here, and their timer generally changes so that they're every 45 minutes instead of every 30. So the idea is that they get more hungry, and so they'll start actually investigating the food that's in their cage in between feeds. So we want them to self-feed. You can.
All right.
So that's a glimpse into the Songbird Hospital.
Should we do a Robin video really quickly?
Sure.
Yeah, we might as well since we have it here.
Just gratuitous cuteness. These are some baby robins being tweezer fed mealworms. And again, it's a really hard job to be a mama or daddy bird. I have to feed these babies from sun up to sundown. And we want to keep them with mom and dad as long as possible.
And they do best in their care. Yeah. And that's I think the main thing. I think that's the main thing is that, and let's get, hummingbirds very quickly.
We're also going to talk about hummingbirds this evening. So hummingbirds are a little different than all of our songbirds in first play. So these guys, as everybody knows, are insanely small, and they need to eat every 20 minutes from sunup to sundown. We have an amazing foster care volunteer, Brenda, takes all of our hummingbirds home, and she's done so for about 20 years for us because we just can't keep up with them in the hospital. And this guy has a really interesting story how he came to us talking about tree trimming.
Yeah, so he was a victim of tree trimming, and they actually found this baby hummingbird on the bumper of the tree truck that must have cut down the nest. So he was on the bumper. Say again, Jim, not you. It was not you.
I was wondering what that was.
No, not, but, you know, and so obviously the nest had been cut, he had fallen out, and it was just a fluke that he didn't end up at the bottom of that pile and ended up on the bumper instead. So it really,
because they didn't know which house and which tree it had come from, we couldn't try to renest him.
Yeah. So to reiterate, you were saying keeping the baby animals with their parents.
It's #1 priority.
Yeah. And so that is, again, what the Respect the Nest campaign is all about. Let's avoid those preventable accidents to animals and do our very best to let their mothers and fathers raise them. Your baby robin's eating there. I mean, we feed these babies, the baby birds, every 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. You think about the time and energy that it takes for parent birds to raise them. It's just absolutely astonishing.
Because we just have to go into the bin and sift out mealworms.
Yeah.
They actually have to go
catch something. Yeah, no, it really is phenomenal. And of course, that's another reason to respect the nest, is the incredible amount of labor that these parents put into the work that they're doing to raise their babies. And so giving them that opportunity as well to raise them to adulthood. So our next section here is we're going to talk about how you would know if you have animals nesting in your trees or bushes or hedges or anywhere in your yard. And we'll start with the fact that there are undoubtedly animals nesting in your trees, bushes, and hedges right now. So just keep in mind.
Here in California, if you're watching us from the East Coast, you might still have some snow and cold, and maybe not yet. But here in California, we are in springtime.
Yeah, and we, again, we'll reiterate that the guidance that we're giving in this webinar is specific to our region, so things might be slightly different for your region, but a lot of this is consistent, and being aware of nests is across the board a good thing. It's really challenging to know if you have a nest in your yard, right? Like you would think that would be kind of easy because, well, it's a nest and surely I'd know that it's there. No, you wouldn't, because nests are very, very well camouflaged, and that's intentional. The birds do everything, and squirrels do everything they can to make their nest as inconspicuous as possible so that it is very, clear. So it's not clear that there is a baby bird or the eggs there, and that it's not available to predators. So they can be very, very tiny. This is a picture. You can see the red arrow and Jacqueline's finger pointing at the hummingbird nest. And this is on a branch of a tree that was cut down in a tree trimming incident. Mm-hmm. And the arborist, again, not Jim, was very, very appalled that this had happened. He said he had checked and he had double checked, and then he still had this happen. And it's because that nest is so very, very, very small. And fortunately, the babies that were in this nest did just fine in care. Brenda was able to release them, but just such a good example of how hard it is to see those nests. And you see that every day, right, Jim?
Pretty much, yeah. We have to look at all the time, yeah. And hummingbirds particularly. I mean, I've walked right by one and barely, wouldn't see it, and then I, see it next time. But
yeah, exactly. So we've got a few things that you can watch and listen for in your yard. So if you in your yard have a bird that's frequently going back and forth to a single area of your yard, if you see somebody ducking into the bushes in the same location over and over, so that's a very good example of indication that there is probably a nest there. If when you go out into your yard, or when your dog goes into your yard, if you get dive bombed, if you have a bird that's acting very aggressive or acting very nervous, there's a really good indication that means there are babies nearby. So that is a good thing to look for. Even if you're not being dive bombed, even if you're not seeing the frequent visiting of a specific area, just being aware that that increased bird activity anywhere in your yard probably does indicate that there is a nest somewhere nearby. So paying attention to that is very important. The periodic sounds of hungry baby birds. It's so funny because one of the best things about volunteering at WildCare, I remember in my first months back in 2003, and I was working in the bird room, and I could walk down the street and go, oh, baby scrub jays, oh, baby robins, oh, baby mockingbirds, because you hear those sounds once you know what they are. And I actually recommend going to YouTube and doing a search for the baby sounds of the animals, the birds that are in your particular region, and then you will hear them in their nests. And once you know the sounds, it's very obvious that they're there. I love it when I hear the baby mockingbirds. They sound like a creek gate. They're so wonderful. But obviously, if you're hearing that, and it's going to be periodically, very anxious, and then they'll go quiet again. When mom comes in to feed, they'll make noise and then otherwise be quiet. So listening for that. and then an area of concentrated droppings. We're going to talk about raptors in a second, so you'll see the whitewash there. With songbirds, it's not really whitewash, but it would be a concentrated area of droppings or feathers. Yeah, so those are all good things to watch for. We have a video here of...
This is a great example of a cavity nest that has been taken over by starlings. So this is a mama or dad starling feeding 3 babies. And it's a good example of, you wouldn't see, I mean, again, just assume that if there's a cavity in a tree, that there's babies in it. See, when they hide, you can't see that anymore, see them anymore.
Yeah.
And it's so hard for birds to find, and squirrels to find cavity nests now, because so many people cut down trees that have them. So when they're old, so important to leave them up.
And Jim, you were saying that a cavity in a tree is always a good indication to you as an arborist that there's something going on there.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, that's something that you may need to reduce weight on that limb or something, but that's, and you have to look for wildlife in that nest for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Got a question come in. We're actually going to answer that coming up, so stay tuned. So those are all good indications that there is an animal probably nesting in your yard, but it's not super straightforward. It's never just straightforward. That's one of the things about wildlife that makes wildlife both fascinating and challenging. We're talking about respecting the nest and arborists. We have Jim here, of course, and we're talking about trees, but it's also your shrubs, your bushes, your vines, your hedges.
A lot of our local species here in California like to nest in those. So towhees and mockingbirds, they love to nest in vines and shrubs. And we even have species, juncos, our songbirds, that actually they build their nest in the grass and the ground.
Right. There's actually a group that's doing a campaign that is all about leaving the leaf litter in your yard because it's so beneficial for the wildlife. And Jim, weren't you saying it's better for the trees too?
For the trees too, recycles all that nice nutrients back into the soil instead of shipping it away.
Right.
It's
so
great.
Leaving your leaves and allowing the animals that use that for nesting, use that as a food source and to benefit your trees, really something to think about instead of doing the blowing and other things that are going to disrupt that, Another thing to be aware of if you are suddenly taking our advice and paying attention to the animals in your yard and being aware of nests and that sort of thing, you want to be kind of careful how you do that. Because if, for instance, you have a hummingbird tree and you're in your ornamental maple tree or whatever, hummingbird nest in your ornamental maple tree or whatever, and you keep going over there to look at it, right? You are attracting attention to that spot. So predators could well see your interest and recognize that there's probably something interesting there. Also, you were talking about the parents feeding.
Yes, so also if you're doing that, you're going to interrupt the babies being fed because a parent will not come to the nest if you're there. So if you're taking pictures and watching, then the parent comes to bring some food and they see you, they're going to leave. So you can cause those babies to not get fed as well as they should.
Yep.
And especially if we ask people to not move things to take pictures or to look, because if you move the branches, again, you're exposing them to predators like other birds and anybody else.
Yeah, definitely. Keeping cats indoors, always a good rule of thumb in every circumstance, but especially when you have nests in your yard.
I would even add dogs to this. If you know that you have an active nest in your yard during baby season, especially when they start fledging, make sure that you take your dogs out into the yard on a leash or try to not let them in the backyard or wherever the nest is on purpose if you can. Just because dogs are very curious and many species of baby birds don't fly right when they leave the nest. It takes them a few days of hopping and practicing, and they're very vulnerable. So keeping your pets away from them is very important.
Definitely. And we always point out to callers when they call our Living with Wildlife hotline, they're like, well, I know I can't do anything about the bush now because there's a nest in it, but is this going to be like months and months before I can do the job? No, it's actually going to be a pretty short time frame.
Yes, there's some really good books, and you don't have to buy the books. You can call us.
We have the books.
We have the Birder's Handbook and Nest Eggs and Nestlings are fantastic books, and we can look up each species, and it'll tell you exactly how long it takes for birds. Are amazing. They will go from egg to nestling to hatchling to flying. Some species, hummingbirds, are flighted within 18 days.
18 days of hatching. I was just going to say, we're going to put the names of those books on the website, discoverwildcare.org/respect the nest. So I know that was kind of hard to see online.
Not a big deal to put the tree work off for a month. I mean, people just let us, the arborists, to do that. I'm sure they'll do that.
Yep.
Yes, and so weighing is a lot easier for a lot of different species. It won't take long.
Yeah, exactly. Quick look at the raptors here. So if you have raptors nesting in your yard, there's probably a good chance that you know it because they're very noisy. I love this picture, Jim. This is one that you took. It was a raptor reunite that you did.
This is one of my favorite ones. And we had to put an orphan bird back in the nest, and the original nestling was just totally shocked seeing its new arrival into the nest. But that was a really it was kind of a difficult job too, because the baby chicks will jump out if they get frightened. So it took a lot of sort of time and effort to get this one back into the nest for the first time.
And both of those babies fledged. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it turned out as a success, I think, isn't it? Yeah.
And just to clarify too, if you guys didn't understand that, the bigger bird in the front, he is not that bird's sibling. So this is something we will do thanks to our great network of wildlife hospitals and nest monitors. Golden Gate Raptor Observatory and a bunch of other groups will help us. And if we have a nestling that has fallen from the nest or the tree came down that we can't reunite, we will network and find active nests with similar age babies and put this baby in with his new family. And that's what Jim did for us here. Is this baby was from another nest that was completely destroyed and we weren't able to re-nest. And he grew up with this family, and the parents adopted him and took care of both of them until they fledged.
Yep.
As long as they cry out, they'll be fed, right? Isn't that?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And you can see that the raptors' nests tend to be pretty big, but Jim, you said even though they're big, they're hard to spot.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So if you think you might have raptors, one of the ways you're going to know about that is the whitewash. So this is the droppings that end up underneath the nest area. And you said that's something that you guys are very aware of when you're working, right, Jim?
We see that. That's something we'll see when we're checking out the condition of the tree, the climate anyway. That's one of the things we'll look for anyway.
Yep.
Which hopefully most people do.
Definitely, yes. And you want to hire an arborist that does that. The castings, you've probably heard of owl pellets. So that's the fur and the bones that the owl's not able to digest. So he's able to kind of basically upchucks it, and it ends up under the nest. So you can see the castings would be another thing that you would see. And the noise of the baby raptors. If you want to hear a noisy baby, do a Google search for a baby red-shouldered hawk, and they are so noisy. Did you say you have some nesting nearby your house?
I don't know if it's the babies, it's the parents.
Oh, yeah.
The parents are so loud.
Yeah. But those are all ways that you're going to know you have a raptor nest. So something to be very careful with. Squirrels nests are actually totally a whole new ball game.
And sorry, just because we have a question right here. Sorry, we forgot to say those were baby red-tailed hawks in that nest. Thank you for asking. Sorry, we meant to say that.
Sorry about that. Yes.
So squirrels, their nests can be really hard. Sorry, I had a note that it was hard to hear, so I'm going to lean up closer to the microphone. Squirrel nests can be hard to identify. A lot of times they just look like a big clump of leaves in a tree. So this is a good picture of a nest. A lot of times they will also be in the crook of a tree, just kind of like that raptor nest was. It's hard to tell. Sometimes you'll see a big group of mistletoe up in a tree and it's hard to tell. But basically assume that any large clump of leaves in a tree is a squirrel nest. They also will nest in cavities like this fox squirrel in the picture if they're available. Their nests are amazing. They look like nothing. They look like just a pile of leaves and like they don't know what they're doing.
I always thought squirrels were really bad builders, and then I saw an inside of a squirrel nest.
Yes, but when they come in, they do an amazing job. This is shredded redwood is the lining of this nest in this photo, and there's a lining of that. Then there's a lining of twigs, then there's a lining of leaves, and then there's all the dead leaves on the outside, and they do that to camouflage it, to make it not look like a perfect little nest. And so, yeah, they're really great nest builders.
Just go back. Watching for activity may not help.
Oh yeah, sorry. With squirrels, yeah, you might not see mom coming and going. Another thing that's different with squirrels and songbirds is a lot of species of songbirds, mom and dad will raise the babies, but with squirrels, it's just mom by herself.
And they have another nest as well, right? Which is to fall back on. You were saying, I think you said. Yeah.
Yes, very frequently. If they have enough space, then a lot of times they will have more than one nest in the area, which is also really helpful. And we'll talk about that when we get to the reuniting. And just assume, we keep saying it, that any cavity in a tree is a nesting hole, because they're so rare and so important that somebody is probably living in there.
Can everyone spot the screech owl in that picture? He's right in the middle.
That's our western screech owl.
Yeah.
And then palm trees here in California, for those of you on the East Coast joining us tonight, you don't have to worry about this, but palm trees are a favorite for many species. Squirrels love to nest in there. And Jim, as an arborist, are you able to spot squirrel nests?
No, it's very hard. This is a Canary Island date palm, and they nest really in this thicket of thorns, and you cannot see anything up there.
Yeah, so it's really hard. It's just to, again, assume that during this time of year, there's going to be baby squirrels in there. Barn owls also love to nest in palm trees, as well as the other type of palm where the fronds hang down. And
the Mexican fan palm. This is a Canary Island date palm, which is the sort of broader, bigger one.
Yeah, so the other one with the ones that hang down is also a very popular place for bats. So different species of bats will roost up under there. So again, important to know your species where you are and time of year, and have an arborist, if you have to do the work, know what they're looking for, and do it at the right time of year.
And you said, Jim, you might be able to tell that you have squirrels nesting because they nibble off the fronds and create a shelf for themselves?
Yeah, no, I've seen that before where they've actually pulled out the dead frond remnants, and they'll make themselves a nice little shelf that they can stand on. So, and birds will take that too. Raptors will take that too as a nest.
Something to look for sure.
Yeah.
So that would be maybe an indication that you have squirrels. But again, just assume that your palm tree full of animals. Yeah. Good segue into you, Jim. Of course.
This is a beautiful Marin County. You can't beat it for a place to work, right?
What's the story of this picture?
I'm sorry, I got a dog running around.
Okay.
This is just a typical day in Marin County. You know, it's just so beautiful. This is, I think, down in Tiburon, I believe. But it's like an old eucalyptus, I think. Yeah, but yeah, this is just from tree pruning. But the Raptor reunites. Here's some babies. You know, there's a spotted owl and then a great horned owl.
Yep.
And then me on the right, bringing it back up to its nest, which we're going to talk about now.
Yeah. So I'll just interject real quick, and then have Jim, you talk about how you do this for us. One of the things that we do with the Raptor reunites, it's very involved. Sometimes it happens right away. Sometimes it takes a couple of days. But again, we network with a lot of local groups. So Ann Ardillo, I think, is watching us today. Hey, Ann is one of our, and Maggie are nest monitors from Golden Gate Raptor Observatory. They know where the active nests are. If we find the babies come down, either by accident or during a storm, we will call our Raptor reunite team and get
known as Jim.
Also known as Jim. and get everything rolling so that the nest monitors go out. They see if the nest is still up. They see if the parents are still there, if the siblings are still there. And then in the hospital, we do all the work to make sure the baby is healthy enough to go back. So we do x-rays on everybody, because a lot of times with these little growing birds, fracture might not unite. It might not be like you imagine a really clear break. They could have what we call folding fractures or something, because they're so young and soft. So we make sure there's no fractures. We do blood work to make sure they're healthy. And once they get the clear bill of health, that's when we set the team into motion, and we will call Jim to actually do the work and get the birds back up there. So Jim, why don't you tell us what you're doing in that photo and how that happens?
Alex Godby, she used to she had her own little tone of voice, which I would know, but when the phone went off, and we would just have to get through it that day or the next day or whenever's a good day, we would just get everybody in. And if I couldn't do it, I would get my other climbers, James Reed. We had Simon Wayne, all sorts of people that would help us, you know, and then we go to the site, and I set my ropes up in the tree, ascend the tree, get up close to the nest very slowly, because you don't want to frighten who's in the nest, if there's any siblings or anyone in there. This is a spotted owl. This was an amazing reunite when they're so calm. This bird was so calm up until the moment she wasn't calm, which was a long time. I put her baby back in, and then she just lost patience. And this was using my cell phone as a shield for to protect myself, but she did grab my hand a little bit, but she was very patient. It took a long time and it came back. So yeah, that was incredible.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So you're bringing in that picture, you're bringing the baby bird up in a box.
So that
well, yeah, I have to get set up and slowly get up to where I can reach the nest, and then that takes a long time sometimes. And then I pull the bird in the box up, and then just very carefully put it into the nest, and hopefully it stays there. Sometimes we'll cover it with a cloth, or sometimes we'll put if the nest is damaged, we'll put a basket up there, and I'll cover the chick with a towel, and that works. And they calm down after a while, and then I can slowly come down and then retrieve my ropes with other mechanisms, so it comes down slowly, so I don't disturb them. So yeah, it's a fun project. It takes time.
Quite a process. I love that picture. You're using your phone as a shield while Mama Owl is like, "What the heck are you doing?" And that was a tiny fluffy baby. I should have put a picture of the baby in.
I know.
Tiny fluffy baby, and the monitor that was spotting that nest watched that baby grow up totally healthy and fledged, and great story. So the work you're doing for us, Jim, is so amazing with that. Couple of other projects that I know you and some of your arborist friends, I love, I think arborists get a bad name in this sort of thing because it's like, oh, they're arborists, they're cutting trees and they shouldn't be cutting trees. But I think the majority of people are like yourself that really care about animals, and you guys use your skills in other ways.
Yeah, well, this is my friend Eric Fulmer. He's called the Tree Wolf, and he's done tree work forever, and he goes out every year to work with a university. I believe it's in Wisconsin. He's listening now, and hopefully he'll be able to answer questions about this project. But he'll go into these golden eagle nests, climb up into these huge nests. You'll see a picture shortly. They're just 6 feet wide, huge nests, and he'll go and bring the chicks down, and they take blood and monitor and stuff. So he's a great resource, and hopefully you can ask Eric questions later about this. It's a really wonderful project.
Yeah,
I've never heard of anyone doing something similar.
Totally. Well, and then you're over there on the right with building an artificial eagle's nest. So that was another.
This was with you, Allison, in Dublin, I believe, in California here, and they had a pole with a small 2-foot metal ring at the top, and so we gathered up all these branches, and I climbed up, and we started making this nest, an eagle's nest, and it was really fun. We did the big stuff first, and I just laid it out, and finally, I was actually standing in the eagle's nest at the end, putting in the grass and the finishing touches, and the parents were circling above. It was really fantastic.
Looking at you, thinking, looks like a nice little spot.
Well, there's Eric with the eagle nest.
But this is a good indication of just the disparity. I mean, you see that hummingbird's nest is the size of a quarter, and then your eagle's nest is the size of Eric. And so
they do come back every year, and that's why it gets so big. But I'm not sure if the hummingbird will do that or.
No, the hummingbirds rebuild their nest a new nest every time.
Oh right. Yeah. Okay.
So what is the ISA, Jim?
It's the International Society of Arborists. It's really the governing body of all the tree, education and guidelines, best management practices. They set up all the ANSI standards for tree work, and this is a guideline for arborists to do with wildlife. I mean, it's really just to do with nesting birds, and it's a guideline of when should not to prune and how far to stay away from the nest if in nesting season. And so it's
information, but would you say that most arborists are aware of this? Is this something that is common knowledge?
I'm not sure all small companies would know that. I mean, I know that I've been working with the fire department lately, and they have a special bird survey that we had to wait for. Mm-hmm. And we had to do just this. We had to stay 300 feet away from this tree. So it is being used, but I just hope it's a resource that every tree company can use. So it is out there. So it's a good reference to know. And it's also made by a man that lives in California, in Pleasanton. So this is related to our area.
Yeah, definitely. We'll actually have this information on our webpage as well. But I just think it's interesting that this guideline does exist, and that you can ask your arborist if they have this knowledge, if they have this information.
Right.
And I like that that's available. I think that's
it's readily available. Yeah. For anyone. Yeah.
Exactly. What's my next? Oops, sorry. Hang on.
Bees.
No, you know, we're not going to, we had a thing of bees, but I think we took that slide out. I think we're going to talk about when it's best to trim your trees. Jim, you want to take
this is actually a bee's nest that we found, another nest.
Is that what that picture is? Oh, okay.
And so we had to go back in the morning to cover the nest up with mesh so they couldn't escape. And then when we took the tree down, we roped this piece down, and we had a beekeeper in, and we salvaged all the bees from this tree. Anyway, that's bees. So another type of nest.
It's true. That's true. Another type of nest to respect. But when is it best to trim your trees, Jim?
Well, it's really best in the fall, in the autumn, you know, and which is traditionally what we do, which we can do that to most species, but now we're having a problem in California with sudden oak death, which is a disease that's travels with water in the winter. So now we have to prune in the summer and spring in the dry season. So that's one little complication, but traditionally, but generally it's just, you know, fall and winter. And that's
better for the trees then too, right?
Yeah, the trees are usually dormant. Some trees, it's not so important. Others are very, very important, but yeah, when the tree's dormant, it's best to prune.
Yeah, definitely. And if you have questions about your trees, we can take care. We'll talk about those at the end of this here. I wanted to our next slide here is talking about you know, you can have someone like Jim who is incredibly wildlife aware, and you can, you know, you're a bit of an anomaly, Jim. I think, you know, I don't know that everybody is as aware of wildlife as you are, and so we want everyone watching this event to be aware that you as the consumer have the right to tell your arborist that wildlife is important, right? Take those steps that we talked about in the beginning of the webinar here. Know the animals in your yard, know that there are nests, and make the decision to delay tree trimming, right? Make the decision to trim your trees in the fall, or wait until the birds have fledged or the nest is empty. And, you know, you need to be aware of that information, and you need to be the one that tells your arborist that wildlife is a priority. I mean, that would be important to you. And if your client wants that, that's important, right, Jim?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's really essential to their project. Maybe something that can wait, you know, and it's usually fits in if they just know, they just didn't know.
Yeah.
So educating, I can educate my client, and they can get educated from you. So it's all just learning and spreading knowledge. So,
and I think a very important note on that too is to, when you do hire an arborist, let them know that if they do accidentally come across a nest, whether they find it or it's cut down, let them know that you want them to let you know and to tell you,
right?
So that you can take over and do the steps that we're going to talk about coming up.
Yeah, let's go down. What do you do, Melanie, if you accidentally cut down a nest or find a fallen baby animal?
All right, so this part of the presentation was completely overwhelming to me because there's so much information. So I want to be very clear with this, that this information is for us in Northern California. It can be different where you are in different states, different counties even, because in different countries, because you may have different seasons, you know, different times, and you also may have different species that do different things than ours do here. So please know that this is just a general guideline, and this is not a how-to. We don't want anybody to re-nest babies or reunite babies on their own. You must call WildCare or your local wildlife hospital first. So this is just general information to help you not panic and know what to do and what to look for in the beginning, so we get to the nitty-gritty. So let's go to
that didn't click. There we go.
Okay.
So the general rule, and this is for all animals, which is why I have a very faint picture of a fawn behind here. This is a little mnemonic that we came up with as a way to tell whether or not an animal needs help. Because you may see a baby animal that's just fine and doesn't actually need rescue. But if that animal is crying, he's making noise, he's going to need help. Is he cold? Anytime you have a baby animal that's gotten cold, or an adult animal too. I mean, we want to stay warm. And if you're cold, it probably means that you have something happening.
I'll add to that. Somebody asked a question earlier about human scent being on animals. That's an old wives' tale. So it is not true that human scent on a bird or a mammal will deter the parents from taking them back. Usually what deters them is that something is wrong with the baby, that the parents can tell that we can't. And 9 times out of 10, it's that baby is cold.
Oh, isn't that interesting? So if you tried to put the baby back in the nest and the baby was kicked back out of the nest, I think that is probably where we all learned that, which is just the weirdest thing.
That's my theory.
But if the baby was cold, then yeah, I could see that.
So always make sure the babies have to be warm.
Yeah, exactly. But it is absolutely a myth. We re-nest all the time. We reunite all the time. And birds are fabulous parents. Most wildlife, I mean, most animals are fabulous parents. Yep. So our third C is the animal approaching you. Is he coming towards you? So you really, if you have an animal, a wild animal approaching you, something's not right.
Especially squirrels.
Yeah, if a squirrel approaches
runs
you,
up your leg, bring them to a wildlife hospital.
Yep.
There's
no excuse for that.
It's like they know they need help and they're going to go get it.
Yep, exactly. Is the animal covered in blood or insects? I feel like that's a pretty obvious one. And has the animal been caught by a cat or a dog? Is the other one. Did we lose? Okay. Has the animal been caught by a cat and a dog? So any of those 5 C's, and we have those on our website at discoverwildcare.org/respect the nest. And so you can keep those in mind. And if the answer is yes to any of those questions, then yes, that animal absolutely needs help.
All right, so going down into the songbirds. So we're going to talk again in general terms, but some immediate responses for if you know that you've accidentally cut a branch or a tree with a nest of birds has come down. So yes, if the whole tree is cut down and there was a nest of birds in there, they absolutely have to come in. Because you can't relocate a nest to another tree. The parents will not move over and keep taking care of them over somewhere else. If the nest is exposed by nearby branches, so a lot of times what we've had
a question about that actually, if you accidentally expose a nest.
Yes. So what happens sometimes is people will start trimming, find a nest and go, oh, well, I'll just leave the nest and cut everything around it, which understand that, you know, your heart's in the right place, but unfortunately what you've done is expose that nest to all of the predators. Yeah. So you can't do that.
The sun and wind.
The sun, the wind, everything. So yes, if the work has been done already and everything, the nest is exposed, those babies, that nest needs to come in.
Yeah.
If a tree trunk has been cut and opened up the nesting cavity that had woodpeckers or screech owls in it, they absolutely have to come in because that will either fill with water when it rains or they're going to be completely vulnerable to predators.
And you said they're often injured. If you're in a cavity nest and the tree comes down, that's a big whomping injury and you're in the middle of it like a pinball.
Yep.
Yeah.
Crows and ravens, those, you would think for as smart of birds as they are that you could re-nest, but we have tried and it is usually not successful. I know I talked Jim into trying a baby crow re-nesting once, and he went up and put the baby in and 2 jumped out the other side, and so we ended up with 2 orphans instead of just 1, and one of them actually broke his leg when he fell, so we had to treat that as well. So for some reason that doesn't work.
Yeah,
it's something you have to be careful with. I know, Jim, with the Raptors, but it seems less of an issue with them.
Yeah, we haven't really come across them too much.
Yeah,
in trouble, maybe, you know. Yeah.
And if they are downy, fluffy babies that have fallen out of the nest and you can't get them back into the nest, the exact nest, then they definitely will need to come in, or any of the 5 C's that Allison had just talked about. So for songbirds, some re-nesting may be possible. And I wanted to throw in a note here that our friend Veronica at Native Songbird Care and Conservation, her group has been working on a new identification chart for birds and what to do when you find birds. So as soon as that's available, we will share that with everybody on our website. But we want to make it clear to folks that we do not want you to leave birds or nests ever without calling us or your wildlife hospital first, because most people cannot properly identify the species of bird that they have. And that's one of the most important things, to know whether or not you can re-nest them or should leave them for their parents to feed. Some species fly as soon as they leave the nest. They, like swallows, they leave their mud nest and they should be able to fly right away. So if you find a swallow on the ground, they're in trouble, they need to come in. However, other species like the robins here in this picture, they will leave the nest and spend 4 or 5 days on the ground hopping around. Being dorks, learning how to fly. And that would be an example of something we would walk through re-nesting. So just some of the general things that when you call us, we might be able to help do a re-nesting. Is if the nest is fully intact and the babies are unharmed, if we can get the baby right back into that original nest. Ideally, if the tree work can be halted or postponed until the baby's fledged.
And again, that's not very long. And if you want to know how long, you can either get the book, which I will have on our website, or you can call WildCare and we can get you that information.
Yep. It is some important information that I think a lot of people have gotten information over the years of, oh, well, this baby fell out. I'm going to put him in a strawberry basket and tape, string that up to the tree and they'll take care of them. Parent birds, when you have nestlings that are this age in the nest, they will not tend to nests. So they may come to the baby a few times and check them out and feed them once or twice, but eventually biology is going to dictate that they don't waste more time and energy onto locations. The other big problem is that baby that's alone can't thermoregulate in the human-made nest.
Control his own body temperature.
Yeah, so he needs to be, they need to be in mama's nest.
So that strawberry basket idea of a separate nest absolutely won't work. That baby needs to come into a wildlife care center.
Right. However, if it's the whole nest,
right,
and the parents are there and the branch is still there, we may be able to put the whole nest in something and attach it to the same spot.
But it has to be the same spot.
It has to be the same spot. So again, so many variables. We are not telling you exactly how to do a renest or a reunite because we don't know until we talk to you and know what your situation is with the species, the age of the animal, injuries, and the weather.
Yeah.
Is it going to be a hot day, raining, cold?
I would say in general, I think if a nest comes down and it has nestlings in it, assume you're going to be making a trip to WildCare.
Yes.
Right. Even if it's just to bring the birds in, we check them out. They're warm, they're healthy. You know where the tree is. The nest can be replaced. All good. But it still is a really good rule of thumb to do that.
And parent birds will not find or tend a relocated nest. We've had some people who say, oh, well, they cut the tree down in the front yard, so we put the nest in the tree in the back. It was just a better tree anyway. Like the parents are not going to know to go looking for that. And again, we've already said this prior, but always call us or your local wildlife hospital first. That's one great thing about technology. With cell phones, you can take a picture of that baby and email it to us, and our hotline staff and volunteers can help you determine the species, age, and what needs to happen. And here's just a couple of pictures for those Songbirds comparisons that I was talking about. These are little finches that are too young to thermoregulate on their own. They can't walk or fly. If they were out of the nest, they are not going to survive. Yeah. This is also finches, but they're older. If you can see that little white Einstein fuzz and their short stubby tail, this would be an age and a species that if they should be out of the nest, hopping around, if they're healthy, that we could possibly have you try a reunite. But again, always want to call first and walk through all of the different variables.
So many different variables.
And then this is a great picture I like to use to illustrate. So this is a parent mockingbird and baby mockingbird. And I'm sure my parents are on here. My father is a great wildlife photographer, and Dad, I hope you don't mind, I stole this picture. That this little baby is so small, and if you found him in the wild, you would think, oh, he shouldn't be on his own. But he's hopping, he's begging, he's running around. This is exactly a healthy fledgling age that we would want to put back with mom and dad to let them continue their job. Yeah. So I think those are all of our examples. Hummingbirds, we have special considerations for hummingbirds. A hummingbird, however, is one of those species that should never, ever be on the ground. So if you find an adult or a baby that is grounded, very easy. They need to come into a wildlife hospital, please. I should have said this on all of the things we were talking about, but never feed them. Yeah. Do not give them sugar water. Usually what happens is people get it all over them. It ruins their feathers. It can cause bacterial infections. Yeah, don't feed anybody that you find. Bring them in
as soon as possible.
As soon as possible. We have 2 different breeding seasons. They have started as early as January here now as well, and they continue through the summer. Hummingbirds will go from hatchling to flight in 18 days. So it's really, again, it's not that long to wait. And you just, please don't disturb the nest and go taking pictures all the time and risk orphaning them. Let's see, we already talked about how small the nest was. We showed a bunch of pictures of that. And renesting of healthy babies is actually possible.
We've had some success with
We've
that
had a lot of Brenda's help. And so we here at WildCare, we have Brenda who will do that with you. It's always with her one-on-one, and she will come do that with you to try to keep, again, the babies out of the hospital and out of home care. So always
save our resources for the animals that really need us. Yeah.
Yep. And this is just a good extra piece of information. Whenever you're picking up a hummingbird, always pick them up with whatever they are holding onto.
Mm-hmm.
They have the world's smallest but strongest feet, and they will grab onto a blade of grass or a small twig, and you can easily break toes or legs if you try to take them off of it. So just scoop up everything that they have with them and put them in the box and bring them in. All right, on to squirrels. So squirrel reunites. Squirrels are very, very easy to reunite many times, but just like with the birds, please don't do this without talking to WildCare or your local wildlife hospital first. Jim, did you have a question?
No.
No, okay. I said Jim raising your hand.
He's petting his dog.
Oh. So this is a picture of a little Eastern gray with a leg splint on who broke his leg in a fall. Mom will have multiple nests in many locations. So here in Northern California, we have 3 species of tree squirrels. We have Eastern grays, Eastern fox squirrels, and Western grays. Where you are, you may have different species that nest at different times or do different things. But for us here, these 3 species, if there's enough room and food, they will have more than one nest. So if the nest becomes overrun with parasites or it blows down, they can move their babies to another nest site. They will pick up their babies by the scruff, just like a mama cat carrying a kitten, and move them one by one. So often our reunites can take a day or 2 because if mom doesn't have a new nest, she has to go build a new one really quick to go have a place to bring her babies to.
And she will. They're really good moms.
Yes. So again, the question always is, once you know there's an active nest, can you just suspend the tree work? That's ideal when possible. The 5 C's still remain important. And then always give us a call to walk through the next steps. So we have a document on our website here. I
don't know that it's up yet. I need to get it up.
Okay, we will have a document.
Check tomorrow.
A PDF on how to walk through a squirrel reunite instructions and how to do this in our area in case you don't have the resources near you that we have here. But this is a good picture of an attempt at a reunite. This is an Eastern gray in a bin at the base of the tree. Really important that it's at the base of the tree that the nest is in, so that she's coming and going. Hopefully you can save the nest if the whole nest comes down. This was a situation where the teenager probably just fell. It was a palm tree. He was probably teenage squirrel, sorry. The teenage squirrel was probably playing with his siblings up in the tree and fell. And so we had to put him in something big enough that he could not climb out of and run away. So we still had control because we didn't want him to go get hit by the cars. So base of the tree, and you notice there's not a lot in this box. It's going to be scary enough for an adult wild squirrel to want to go into a Rubbermaid box. So you want her to see that her baby is in there. So we don't put a bunch of stuff in there. And then the important thing is to stay away. Do not go check on them every 10 minutes because you could scare mom away. This is a good example of redwood nesting material that we can reuse to re-nest, because if you're a mama squirrel, you're going to be much more likely to recognize your own nest and go to it to take your babies back up, right? And this is a picture of a reunite that we just did yesterday. That was so amazing.
These wonderful people took the baby and put him out where he needed to be. And we're going to hit, hang on, let me hit play here. There we go.
So there's Mama.
Okay.
And the babies are under that towel with some nesting material. And there she goes, and she scoops them in her mouth and has to readjust. They were tubby, happy little fat babies, so she had a hard time carrying her kids. And there she goes.
I want to watch that again.
Yeah. So basically,
sorry.
It is really great that they will take their babies back, and they want their babies. They're really good moms, and they will take them back. And so we want to do everything we can to get those babies to be with mom. And not us whenever possible.
Thank you to Linda for this wonderful video. You guys did such a great job with this. This reunite. So incredibly fun.
And there's a lot of information that goes with how to do this, right? You want to make sure that the babies are warm and they're safe and not vulnerable to predators, and it's in the right place. So again, please always call and get the information, but just so you know, it is possible. And again, I will reiterate, just like I said with the hummingbirds, same with the squirrels or any orphan babies you find, never, ever feed them. Please don't feed them. I know it's so tempting, but if you feed them the wrong food, like cow's milk that's made for a 1,300-pound cow, not a little tiny baby, and you can give them deadly diarrhea and cause all sorts of problems. So please do not feed. Keep them warm, dark, and quiet. Call us or your local wildlife hospital and get information on what to do for them right away. I'll let you close up.
We are actually closing up. Why don't you go start your water?
Okay.
We are at time. I can't believe that worked as well as it did timing-wise. So just a few resources here. So again, the discoverwildcare.org/respect the nest, and that's the website. Just discoverwildcare.org and do a search for Respect the Nest, and you'll find this as well. I'm going to have this recording of this webinar up here. We're going to have the ISA guidelines on there, and also the Squirrel Reunite procedure that Melanie was talking about. We'll have a link to our resource to help you find your local wildlife care center. So that is going to be a good resource for you. And I don't have it on there yet because I had other things I was doing today, but the Animal Help Now app is one you highly recommend. That was developed by a woman here in the Bay Area.
Yes, so Animal Help Now is a free app you can put on any smartphone. And whenever you find an injured or orphaned animal, it can be wildlife or domestic, you put in the information of where you are located, what the species is, and the app automatically pulls up the closest resources to where you are. So I have this on my phone. I use it when I travel because, of course, even when I take a vacation, I still find injured orphan
She's like
animals.
Snow White.
So it's a great resource to have, and it's free. You can obviously make donations to help support it, but
and I think it's in the App Store, and it's also Google Play. You can get it through both of those, and I'll have a link to that on our website as well. Keep our hotline handy. I'm sure the overwhelming message that you got here is A, respect the nest, and B, call WildCare. And make sure that you have our number handy. We do have our hotline staff from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And so really a great resource for you. And if you find an injured animal or if you have questions or concerns. And of course, I have Jim's information on here, Small World Tree Company, located here in Marin County. What's your range like, Jim?
All over the Bay Area, really, but mostly Marin. You know, I'm based in San Rafael, and we like to work close as we can, but, you know, yeah.
And super useful resource, though. You're up for questions if people have them, right?
Yeah.
Excellent. I can facilitate that and send them. Yeah, it's just so wonderful to have Jim, to have you and your company as a resource for us, because you know, you do incredible work, and it's all so wildlife and habitat oriented, and just really you're an amazing. And of course, you do so much for WildCare in terms of the renestings and all the other projects that you
because I have a bucket truck. That's why I'm so popular now.
But you never had the bucket truck. You always had to climb.
That's very true.
The bucket truck is new. So we're very, very grateful. But we're going to go into our squirrel feeding now. So we have never done this before with the webinar thing. So this is going to be a new experience. So we're aiming down here. Get my hair out of the picture.
Okay. We have that, yes.
That we do. Let me.
Everybody can see. This would be the time to type in any questions that you have, and we can answer those while we're
Might be hard to see because we have it tilted down, but we'll figure it out.
So right now we have 11 baby squirrels in care that were not able to be renested. We have these are 3 fox squirrels that are about almost 4 weeks old. So baby squirrels, their ears start standing up at 3 weeks and their eyes open at 4, and he is just about there. So we're going to feed, one of the things we do at this age, they're fed every 3 hours, not through the night, thankfully, anymore, because that's exhausting. I've got some. Yeah, so they're fed every 3 hours, and we have a special milk replacement that is specifically for squirrels. So every species has their own calcium phosphorus ratio, protein needs, everything. Again, why we say you don't want to feed cow's milk to any babies. We have except baby cows. We have specifically baby squirrel food formula. We also have a possum formula and raccoon formula for those guys. Let me see if I can. There we go.
There we go. They've turned into good little eaters.
Good little eaters. So we do this every 3 hours, about 5 or 6 times.
Hungry.
Huh?
You're making me hungry.
Get you some squirrel formula.
Yep. And one of the very, very, very important things that we do is we never, ever raise any of our babies alone. They are always with conspecifics so that they grow up knowing that they are what they are. They have their patient ID numbers. We don't name them. We're not playing with them or cuddling with them. The only time we do anything with them is to feed, clean, or medicate, and that's it, because our goal is they have to grow up wild. And not come to people. I don't know what she's doing with the waggy tail here. Or otherwise we haven't done our job properly if we haven't made them wild. And so that's one of the ways we do that, is always raising them with others. So if we get a singleton in from somewhere, then we don't have a match. We'll network with our other centers in the area and say, hey, we have a 50-gram Western gray squirrel who's alone. Do you guys have one we can have? And I'll trade you 3 raccoons for 3 squirrels.
It's like go fish.
It's like go fish. We're wheeling and dealing. So yeah, so
one thing that I wanted to bring up that I think we didn't mention during the webinar was the MBTA, the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. We had a note to ourselves that we wanted to bring that up. That, of course, is the federal law that makes it illegal to disturb or destroy an active nest or a bird, the feathers, eggs, and nests of native birds throughout the United States. And so I know, Jim, that's something you're very aware of because it is an actual legal requirement.
Yep.
Yeah, and so you know, it's I know the reason that you are not going to disturb a nest is not because it's illegal, but it is an added.
It's something you can use too if you're in a situation where you're trying to get people to. Yes. Yeah. So the next stage is while their eyes are closed, they do not urinate or defecate on their own. We have to help them with that. And Allison's going to do that while I feed the next one. And we're going to answer a couple of these questions that are coming in. So one question was, who should people call for help if they live somewhere without a great organization like WildCare? Thank you for that compliment.
Yes.
So those resources will be on our website, and on our website there is a link where you can go and you can wildlife rehabilitators are listed by state, so you can find those guys, and also that Animal Help Now app is also a great free resource.
But we do take calls from throughout the country and actually around the world at WildCare.
Yes, we've had calls from all over the country. Just remember that you may be in a different time zone than us.
Yes.
We actually, I fielded a call from Egypt once about an injured squirrel, and her son was going to Berkeley, and that's how she knew about us.
Yeah, exactly. So, she called us from Egypt.
You never know. And the other question.
So we can give you advice and hopefully direct you toward to the closest local center. And I have to say, where I grew up, the closest local center is a good couple of hours away, or a good hour away. So it's not always going to be close, but I love, you know, we're all animal people, and we all, you know, we're willing to go the extra mile for these little guys. Oh, we're getting poop out of this one.
And then the other question is about Salmonella and Feeders. So yes, here in California and across the Northeast, or Northwest, sorry, we are having a Salmonella outbreak. So yes, we are advising that all people do not have bird feeders up right now.
We're still getting birds in, right?
We're still getting birds in until that passes, for sure.
What we're recommending is to call WildCare. So again, our hotline right there, call and ask if we have had Salmonella birds come in. And when we get to a point where it's been about a month without getting any in, I think we can safely assume that the threat has passed. But it's still super, super important to keep your bird feeders clean, bleaching with a 10% bleach solution at least once a week. And
I mean, ideally, you don't have them up at all right now.
Yeah, well, right now, exactly. But once it's over,
but after,
sure, afterward, yeah.
Sorry.
All right, I'm gonna, here's this little guy.
He's done.
He's done. He's gonna go back into his little incubator. Which one is he in?
Purple top. And there's another question. Do we need volunteers? That's a great question. So yes, normally we have an orientation every year, and we get about 200 people who come in and go through trainings. But now with COVID, we've had to redo our entire protocol. So if you are interested in volunteering, please visit our website and click on the volunteer link. And there's information there on how to, what we are requiring for folks right now. And if you are interested, you can fill it out and make a submission.
I'm accepting volunteers too.
Yes, if we have any volunteer tree climbers in the area, that would be great. Chipmunks. chipmunks are abundant on our property in New Jersey. Are there many instances where they are injured or abandoned? Ah, that is a great question. So we do have some chipmunks here in our area. They love the redwood forests here. So yes, that happens quite a bit. I know a lot more on the East Coast. So we do end up with babies. A lot of times people, because they're denning animals, they den underground. So people will be digging up a foundation or something like that. So we can try to reunite them sometimes, but typically it has not been successful for us that we end up with them. But honestly, in my 20 years here, I think maybe we've had 30 chipmunks total. So I don't have a lot of experience with them. I know they're a lot more prolific on the East Coast, so wildlife hospitals there probably could answer your questions better than I.
One thing about chipmunks is don't feed them. And that's true about all wildlife. That's another campaign that WildCare does, is encouraging people not to feed wildlife, because anytime you have an animal that gets used to humans as a source of food, that's an animal that's going to get in trouble with us, with our cars, with our pets, with our, you know, anything else. Getting wild animals accustomed to humans is a death sentence for most of them. You've heard a fed bear is a dead bear, and that's the same. Yeah.
So this little guy, his little tail, I don't know if you can, he's hard to get him to stay still.
I'll go over there a little bit.
Where am I?
You're there.
Oh, sorry, thank you. Everything's backwards. He has a little birth defect that happened in utero. His tail is bent, and so we're splinting that for a couple hours every day to get that to straighten out. Another really cool thing about squirrels is that their back ankles rotate 180 degrees, and I believe they're the only mammal that does that, at least here in North America, so that that's how they can climb head first.
Right, as opposed to cats.
Down a tree, because their ankles do that.
I also love that they're born with those black fingernails. Over there.
There you go. There it is.
Down a bit.
So I don't know if you can see, he's already got fingernails, and they're incredibly strong. Even at 3 weeks old, he can hang.
Oh, there you go.
I can't find the camera, sorry. Even at 3 weeks old, he can hang on there. They're definitely built for climbing. Some more questions. Okay to keep the hummingbird feeder up. Yes, as far as I know, the hummingbirds are not affected by the salmonella outbreak at this time.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's the salmonellosis is transferred from oral to fecal contact. So when you have a bird feeder and your birds are up there eating, and then they're pooping, and then the birds fly down and eat the seed on the ground, that's when that happens. And that is obviously not something that happens with the hummingbirds. But keeping your hummingbird feeder clean is extremely important. And we don't recommend bleach for that. We use vinegar for that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just changing it out.
Changing it out on a regular basis, at least once a week. If it starts to look cloudy, really, really important to make sure that is clean, because that would be an easy way to spread disease between your hummingbirds. But yeah, the salmonellosis is less of an issue with them.
So we have a question about, can we talk about rabbits? I'm not sure exactly what you would like to know, but rabbits are very much like fawns.
Jackrabbits are.
Here in California, we have jackrabbits and brush rabbits, and they do not have nests. So cottontails on the East Coast and the Midwest will actually build nests. So their information is very different. We don't have those guys here, but for here in California, with our brush rabbits and jackrabbits that we have in the Bay Area, they're just like fawns. Mom will have a baby, have two babies, and have them in different locations, and then she will leave. She will feed them, leave for the day, and come back and feed them at night and move them, and then come back and leave for 12 hours and feed them again. So a lot of times people will think baby rabbits are abandoned, just like they think fawns are, when mom has really just gone off to keep them safe. So anytime you find a baby rabbit or a fawn, our advice is always, always, always to leave them there, unless they match one of those 5C criteria. And if they don't, leave them, give us a call, and we can help you determine if they are in fact orphaned, or if mom is just off doing what she's supposed to be doing and she'll be back later.
Oh, sorry. Our decorations are falling down.
So I think that's it. I don't see any more questions coming up. If you want to put the thing back up. And
the thing back up. Yep, absolutely. So that was super fun. That worked out really well. Thank you for that, Melanie. Yep. Our little babies are doing well. Oh, could we repeat the 5 C's? Yes. I will also have those on the website, but if an animal that is cold, crying, coming towards you, covered in insects or blood, or caught by a cat or a dog or another animal, those are all circumstances that the animal's going to need help. Cold, crying, coming towards you, covered in blood or dirt, blood or insects, and caught by another animal. Those would all be instances.
And I'll add one more thing about caught by cat in general. Anytime any wild animal, any age, is caught by a cat, you must bring them to a wildlife hospital. We've had so many people say the bird was caught by a cat and I let him go. You cannot tell if they're injured or not under all those feathers, and cats have really tiny teeth that can cause a lot of injury. And the Pasteurella in their saliva can cause an infection that will kill them very quickly. So even if you don't see any injuries, if any wild animal is brought to you by a cat, always bring them to their wildlife hospital, please.
I was thinking about when you get, just scratched playfully by your cat, if you have a kitty, then and it gets kind of red and itchy. If you think that we have the bacteria in their claws has that impact on us, and we're big, imagine the impact it has on a tiny baby squirrel or something like that. Yeah. Well, everyone, this has been so fun. Again, it will be available on our website if you want to share it with friends and family. It's been such a joy. Great questions, everybody. So happy to have everyone here. Jim, your expertise and knowledge is so appreciated. Melanie, you're a marvel. I don't know how you do all of the things that you do. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And this has been such a success. I think we're going to have more webinars. So keep your ears open. We can talk about WildCare endlessly.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Good night.
Right. Thanks, everybody. Hey.